Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 148th film. It's the 2019 Spanish drama, Who Would You Take to a Deserted Island? Or in Spanish, bear with me, a quién, llevarías a una isla desierta. That sounds more like a dessert than a desert. All right, this is directed by Jota Linares, and it stars Pol Monen, Jaime Lorente, Andrea Ross, and Maria Pedrazas. I'm Jesse. Hey MJ, how are you?
I'm good. When you said just prior to press and record, watch me butcher some Spanish here, I didn't think you were going to have a crack at the title in Spanish. I thought you were just going to struggle with some of the actors' names, but well done. I think hopefully you didn't offend anyone.
I could have sworn. I don't know. I've got no idea what I said. But yeah, we've got a Spanish film today, so something a little bit of a mix-up that we haven't seen in quite a while.
Very true. We've had a couple of Spanish films though, so we're not in completely foreign territory. Mind the pun.
Yeah, very good. All right, well, we start our show off with our Fast Flicks, where we do a quick summary of what the film's all about. And what do you think this one is about, MJ?
All right, Fast Flicks for Who Would You Take to a Deserted Island? So with change upon them, four long-term flatmates start to explore and examine where their lives are at.
Nice. Yeah, I've just said this is one last hurrah for a group of friends leaving an apartment which turns direction when a game about truth is played.
Very nice.
Good. Well, what have you learnt about how Netflix acquired this one, or how it came to be?
Yeah, it's a little bit trickier than normal, as we often find with foreign language films. Trying to jump into the Google world and figuring out that there's not too much on there in English. It didn't even have a good Wikipedia page, which is my go-to. That's just where you can pick and choose a few bunch. It was actually probably the worst Wikipedia page I've ever seen for a film. Like, it was nothing. But maybe there's a Spanish one somewhere that can help us out. But anyway, what I did find, and it's not much, but I did find that it's actually based on a popular Spanish play by Jota Linares, who was also the director of the film. Yep. It actually turns out that this concept, this story, it began as a short by the same director. Then it was brought to the stage, where it became pretty successful from audience and critical circles. And then Linares was really eager to make a feature film off the back of it and provide, obviously, a little bit more air to the story. There's always elements that the stage can't really allow for. So that was the reason why this came to be. And it does seem that this probably wouldn't have been made without Netflix. So I did manage to stumble across an interview with the producer, Beatriz Bodegas. Excuse me for probably butchering that one, unfortunately. But basically, they were shooting another feature that Jota Linares had made called The Island or Island. They offered that to Netflix, and then that's when the conversation sort of began about acquiring this film. And they basically told Netflix that they wanted to work in a different way than they normally have with their productions. Basically, they wanted to have complete freedom in making this feature. They've obviously got a lot to do with it, from the fact that it was their play and all that kind of stuff. So they wanted all the casting, all the shooting, all the editing, all basically done by them. And Netflix was happy to oblige. And basically, from what I can gather, it is quite difficult at the moment to make medium budget sort of feature films in Spain. And Netflix obviously came on board to give them that freedom, and it was obviously very welcome, and give them a global audience, which is always nice. So that's kind of all I've got. I know there's a little bit more about awards and stuff, but that's the crux of how it got here. And I don't know. Hopefully that helps.
You got so much more info than I did, so thank you. You opened my eyes a little bit about what's going on. So good further research from you. I appreciate that. I did some translations for the titles. Most countries, it was Who Would You Take to a Desert Island, not a deserted island. So that's the main difference, I guess, with this one. But Turkey, it was called If You Were Stranded on a Deserted Island, Who Would You Take With You? So a bit of a mouthful.
Okay, wow.
And then in Vietnam, this one was called Who Would You Take to a Wild Island? So Yeah. I wonder what's on the Wild Island. Very, very interested.
It's a very intriguing title, to be perfectly honest. It's one of those titles that it's not a great title because it's a mouthful and it's not punchy, but it is something that stands out. I know we've got a list, you and I, of movies that we're going to cover on this podcast because we do them in the order they have been released. And this one just stood out to me for some time, just looking at it like, what is this film? It's a interesting title. So I don't know whether it's good or bad. I haven't got an opinion on it yet.
I'm the same as you. Like that title stood out, and the whole time I had these expectations of what this was going to be about, and it is definitely not anything that I had in the back of my mind about
That's
what
true.
it might cover. So I guess we'll talk a little bit of this. It's a Spanish film. It was made in Madrid. It played at the Malaga Film Festival on the 22nd of March 2019 before hitting Netflix worldwide on the 12th of April. You mentioned before some awards, so it was nominated for 3 awards, won one of those 3. So it was nominated at the ASCEAN Award for the Best Supporting Actress for Beatrice Arjona, which is a tiny role for this character called Maggie. Very, very, very small role. It was also nominated at the Malaga Spanish Film Festival where it played for Best Spanish Film. And it also, the only win that it won was for the Best New Actor Award for Pol Monen, who played Ez at the Kibra Awards. So a little bit of award recognition there on the international stage.
Was Maggie the neighbor who was hanging up the laundry?
Yeah, the one that was putting out the washing.
Okay. Yep. Cool. I wasn't sure. I could. Yeah, that didn't. Good on her. Well done.
Yeah, one little scene. So I guess we can talk a little bit about what others are thinking about this. What's some consensus that you've seen for this one?
Yeah, so I always have a look at IMDb and Letterboxd, and it's a 5.3 out of 10 on IMDb of 2,300 ratings. So not a huge score and not a huge amount of eyeballs, which is not terribly surprising. Obviously, IMDb, a very American or westernized kind of platform. And Letterboxd is a 2.4 out of 5. So similar, albeit a little bit lower, just over 2,000 ratings again there. So it's not hugely popular. I think if you look at the graphs, it does definitely skew towards the lower end with a lot of sort of, 1-star kind of ratings for it. So it wasn't terribly popular and not a heap of eyeballs. So we're not loving this from Netflix, but again, it's great that they've got these international films as their originals as well. So there's a bit more to play with that.
Yeah, the same with critics on Rotten Tomatoes, only 6 reviews. However, it's probably the most positive data we've got. It sits at 83% on those 6 reviews. So sits at fresh, not certified. Not one audience member on Rotten Tomatoes has gone on to not one. So the eyeballs on this one's a little bit lower than some of the other Netflix films that we have looked at, I guess.
Do you have a Rotten Tomatoes account, Jesse? Are you going to jump on and be one of those? No.
I guess it could, but no, I don't have the time. Can't be bothered, to be honest. And it's Rotten Tomatoes. Let's be honest.
Yeah, we don't like Rotten Tomatoes.
Let's not waste our time. Well, what are your early thoughts on this one?
Well, I guess I'm in the camp of the critics on Rotten Tomatoes because I like this. I definitely enjoyed the mix of nostalgia and philosophical ponderings. I think it does a really good job of capturing those years of growing up and the struggles of being who you want to be versus who you think you can be or should be. And, the people that form your life and there's this clear and distinct moment that you kind of move on from one chapter of your life to the next. And so often we don't really have a clear delineation in our own lives, but this movie seems to capture that time and that feeling so perfectly that you can relate to it in some way. And with all that said, I found some of the character arcs and issues really interesting, but I never really cared for the characters too much. That was a bit of an issue of mine, but generally it really connected with me.
Good. The build at this start of this film bored me, to be completely honest. Like the start of this film was a struggle. I think I stopped and started. Like I started, I got to come back and start again. I think I did that like 3 times. So not a good start for me, but once we got to the truth game, I was all in. And I loved almost every moment onwards from that till the end. And with a better start, this could possibly have been in the high end of some of my favorite films. I like that. Interesting take. Yeah. So this is a character piece to be honest. This film is about the characters. There's no real plot. So let's talk about some characters. Hit us off with your first one.
Well, she's probably not the one maybe that we should talk about first, but I want to talk about Marta first. And I loved Marta. I was drawn to this girl immediately. Like, she had this cheeky, curious, happy-go-lucky nature. And maybe you're right that the beginning of the film was a little bit slow and tedious, and it must have been Marta that just drew me into it, and I was sort of following her story. But you know, she's introduced really early with her philosophy on, you know, what would you tell your 19-year-old self? And I loved her ideas that you don't want to know what happens at the end of the movie, right? So why would you divulge that much? And there's just this connection I had with her straight away. And then later on, we get that reveal about, you know, how and why she never wants to hurt anyone. And you get the vibe that this mantra has sort of been there all along. And that's maybe why I liked her all along. And I thought it was a really good performance by Maria Pedraza. And this character was just drew me in immediately. And I loved her. I think she was great.
Yeah, I think that, obviously she's one of the people we see very early on. And I think she's very likable. As you mentioned, she, you know, later on we hear she's most proud of never hurting anyone. And that ties in with what we see throughout the film. You know, she's found the man of her dreams. She doesn't want to create conflict. She's happy to give up everything that she wants to follow him and make him happy and not offend him. And, you know, she obviously wants to be a ballet dancer, and she's happy to give up on that dream and, you know, just teach, because, you know, that's all if you can't do, you teach, isn't it? And, you know, she just wants to be with Marco, and, you know, there's very little in her that you can dislike. So I think you bang on there where you're talking about you connected with her so well, because I don't think there was a part of her that you couldn't like.
Yeah, exactly. And in probably stark contrast, all the other characters had this angst about them that I didn't really like as much. And that's probably where it was a bit hard. But that doesn't mean I wasn't interested in them. And I think probably tying on from Marta, we can go to Marcos. And I didn't connect with him. And the longer it went on, the less I liked him. And I didn't know why I felt like this, because I felt like I was supposed to like him. But clearly my feelings towards him were bang on, because he was more or less the villain of this story. But like, he's a villain because he's lost and he's confused and he's trying to deal with this situation and he's going about it the completely wrong way. And I think that's the commentary, right? Like, be proud of who you are, lean into who you are. Don't string people along with your lies just because you're just going to hurt them. But this guy was in a weird place and he was confused. And instead of trying to work through that, he tried to just ignore it. And it was all about the lies, right? And he was hurting everyone whilst he was doing it.
Yeah, but there's not much more you can say. That the lies and being a liar and keeping these secrets was, and you know, most people aren't going to connect with a character who, you know, is constantly being deceitful. So, and like you mentioned too, that there's not necessarily his fault, but this idea that he doesn't know who he is yet, and he thinks he has it all, but realistically, he doesn't have anything, and that's a really hard situation to be in. If you know, you're not being true to yourself, then you can't be true to others. And I think there's a comment towards the end too that he's not capable of loving anyone, and he can't love anyone if he doesn't love himself and who he is. So there were some good little moments for him, even though he was, like you said, the villain.
Yeah, and that's the great pick. And villain's it's probably a bad term, but in the context of this story, that's kind of how it works. You know, he's not like Scar from The Lion King, for example, where he's purely out to do wrong by people.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of leads into Ez, and I feel like they pronounce his name so differently to the way I like read it and the way I'm going to say it. So I couldn't quite. There's just the way that they spoke. They did it the way I can't do it anyway. But I'm going to call him Ez. But he's kind of like the lesser version of Marcos in the sense that he's also not being entirely true to himself, but he's less in your face about the lies that he's living. It's more. He's not necessarily ignoring who he is and playing a version of himself to the public eye. He's more shy and embarrassed about how to be gay. Spoiler alert, actually. We haven't done a spoiler alert. We are going to spoil this film. We probably have a little bit anyway.
We've done pretty well.
We haven't done it too much. Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. If you do want to watch it, we are going to spoil it a little bit more than I already just did then. But you can imagine that Marcos and his feelings towards Marcos must have confused, you know, his own situation. So he's living with this secret. He's watching a man who he has feelings for basically just toying with his emotions every single day, and it's clearly eating him up inside. And his resolution for me is one of satisfaction, more so than it seems on the surface, because he moves on, he grows up, and he makes a life for himself. And it might not be the big dreams that he had, but in the context of his life, it's much more important what he did than what he could have done. So he's kind of like this lesser version where we're pretty happy with the way he actually handles it in the end.
Yeah, I think that like it's that mixture where Marcos doesn't have anything together really. Everything's a lie. Whereas A's got that the professional life seems to be coming together, like going off to film school in London and being a writer, whereas the personal life's a bit of a mess. And I like that early on, he's got this out clause. He's got this idea that I'm out of here. So I think that no matter what happened in that situation in that final night, didn't matter if there were drugs, didn't matter if there were alcohol. I think there was going to be some sort of confrontation from him because he was on edge that whole time anyway, from the start, from the get-go. He was on edge about moving on. And I think that more so than not, this narrative is the poking prod to his story and his life. And I think that, and we've already said spoiler alert, but I think that's why we get his point of view from the end. That's why we get to see where he's at and how he's doing, rather than just a verbal explanation, like a side note to where he is. Because I think that this helps push his story that he was always going to get out of there, and he always needed to confront those people that in his life that possibly have let him down.
That's it, like slay the dragon. And I think Celeste is really similar in that sense, where her infatuation with Ez is one of the bigger components of this story that probably isn't explored enough, because she's clearly happy enough living in this bubble and is quite resistant to this impending change of them all moving out. But she's still ultimately unhappy with how everything is panning out with her life. And this is pretty relatable feeling at that age, because the idea that, well, let me see where this particular strand of my life is going to take me. I'm not happy right now, but that's okay because I'm young and maybe I'll get happiness from whatever I do next. And maybe that's true, but Celeste needed the push from others to make something of her life. And that push basically was a falling out with all these people. And her discovering that her feelings towards Ez were unfounded and ill-directed, and it kind of allowed her to take stock of her own life. And as we see her move on and move forward in a way that you probably wouldn't have anticipated the girl that you met at the start of the movie, which is, only 24 hours past, really. So it's the necessary evil that helps her get on with her life and make good decisions off the back of it.
Yeah, and tying in the first scene we see her, she's hungover, she's in the bed of a random, she needs Ez to get around. She's down and out. She's no hope. She's literally got no hope at that stage. She's resigned to the fact that she's going to work in fast food. And then to see the final shot of this film is her moment. So I think that, and then like you mentioned too, that breakup at the apartment, like she had a really nice little arc of down and out, need that point. This is where I'm at now.
Yeah, bang on.
Any other characters that you wanted to talk about? No.
I didn't know there anywhere anymore, except for someone who got an award.
Yeah. When I saw the award, I was like, am I supposed to talk about her a little bit or not? Any interesting things about the director? You mentioned early on anyway about him being the writer for the stage show anyway. Yeah,
obviously I'm quite unfamiliar with a lot of their work, being not watching too many Spanish stuff.
Yeah, 5 shorts. Did a feature before this one, some TV, upcoming film called Crystal Girls, obviously, like you mentioned, all in Spanish. So, not on our radar.
Yeah, unfortunately, but doesn't mean they don't have to be.
Good. Time to talk about some scenes. We'll start off with some ones that you enjoyed in this one.
Yeah, well, I think I'm just going to call it who would you take to a deserted island scene, or desert island, whatever they wanted to call it. It was big, it was strong, it was memorable. Obviously, there was a lot of probably components that came off the back of that scene, but that was a really memorable scene for me, because the way that argument between all of them basically escalated and then simmered and then continued to escalate, and it sort of just kept evolving. There was obviously the reveal of both guys being gay, which, to be perfectly honest, I didn't pick. Not that I was looking out for it, but obviously that was a big surprise and it was a big catalyst of the film anyway. But yeah, that whole scene in general just felt good, felt raw. I thought all the acting performances were excellent, and just there is that level of relatability of when you are drunk and hanging out with people, how quickly a night can turn because someone says the wrong thing or misinterprets the wrong thing. I really liked it. I thought it was a great scene.
Yep, excellent.
Off the back of that, I probably almost my favorite part of the film was Marta's monologue about her mum's empty eyes, telling the story about when her dad left, and that being the reason, like we said, why she vowed sort of never to hurt anyone in her life. And like what a trait, and what a way to want to base your life. Here we got people trying to base life on their careers and what they're going to do next, and her whole thing is all about, well, as long as I'm not making people upset, that I'm doing what I want to do, and if that means I'm going to go teach dancing or actually try and perform, it doesn't matter because I'm being true to my morals. And this character, she got me. I thought she was great.
Good.
And then that sort of goes on as well. I'm breaking these scenes up. We could just do one big thing, but the turmoil and the aftermath on the balcony of Marcos and Ease, I thought, again, as I said, it just kept escalating, and you weren't sure whether there was going to be a deflation. And I must say, I'm really happy that they didn't end up together and they didn't sort of reconcile, because I didn't like Marcos. I don't think he deserved that arc in his story, particularly that quickly. And again, I thought it was done really well, really raw. Is going to jump off the balcony, it just really captured a lot of great stuff. And the only other scene I do have is right at the end when Celeste takes a photo of Ez. That recognition of that moment, and how it might not have turned out the way that you thought, but it still turned out great. He's a guy who he got through a lot. He thought he wanted to be a director. He thought he wanted a certain guy in his life, but he sort of just took it all on board. He's back taking photos. Cool. No big deal. That's fine. You're sort of reconciling with a friend. there was something in that moment where she just paused and took stock of it and took a photo that just really, really connected with me again.
So is he saying that you appreciated her taking the physical photo rather than a memory on the phone? Is that where you...
No, I guess it was more the idea of her actually taking stock of that moment and wanting to say, hey, stop right there. Because in essence, it's a nothing moment. It's a nothing moment where they've just sort of said, g'day, caught up, and he's leaving. And she's like, hang on, to me, there was just a feeling of, let's just sit back and smell the roses, because we've actually got to a place that's really good from a place that was really bad.
Yep.
And sometimes you never actually stop to smell the roses until it's too late. And you go, hang on, geez, we did a really good job there, because you're so quickly moving on to the next thing.
Cool. Nicely put. I enjoyed the film references throughout. Obviously, you've got a character who wants to do film school. So the Marilyn Monroe posters and Celeste, trying to promote herself as that type of actress. And early on, I saw the Thelma and Louise poster in the background. And I just really liked that they had the thought to put that in the room and then follow that through with a storyline of, doing that Route 66 and that photo at the end together. I thought that was really cool, and some Blade Runner quotes. I just appreciated those little things that tied in well with that character, I guess. And as you mentioned too, I found it really hard to break up that game scene. The who would you take to the deserted island? I think that I enjoyed that it started off with, you can take two people with you, tell us who and why, because there was still an extra person that was going to be missing out in that room somewhere. So it still made it edgy. And then just to follow through and go, nah, let's do this. Just pick one. And just the reveals throughout the game with what people were saying, and it the stakes increased. You learn a lot of secrets. You get this understanding as to why Eze doesn't like Marta. It just helped reveal the plot so well. Even though that setup was a bit slow, it helped me appreciate it a little bit more. And I think that's good. I think I like that 5 year later check-in too. I think that it could have been an impactful film if you just finished it where it was and left you questioning where are these people going? What's going to happen? But I think, towards the end, I really did like the scene with the two of them in the theater together. I think that it was a good closure.
So do I.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right. What are some things that you didn't like in this?
There really wasn't much, to be honest, Jesse. I think if I'm being a little bit critical, I thought the masturbation scene probably lingered a little bit too long. I think the point was made, and it was a little bit more of just look what we can do here on film and be a little bit edgy. So that's probably just the main thing for me that just I thought didn't need to be that long.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think that, like I mentioned already, the first 20 minutes or so, I really didn't really like, but looking back on it, I can see it wasn't actually too bad a setup. I think that, especially like you mentioned with the sex references, there's a story that it all adds to this character of Marco, I guess, about their first sexual encounter, and it makes more sense as to how that sexual encounter finished, and it makes more sense when you do see him masturbating, and it makes more sense. Just these references. So, and it also set up that script read that Marta does as well. Without her reading that script, that blow up probably doesn't happen as well. There's a scene where they go to the club. I don't understand why they needed to do drugs. It didn't add anything to the story. Stick with alcohol, that's cool. It still would have been the same blow up. It wouldn't have really changed anything, to be honest.
I was going to say the same thing, to be honest. I thought about putting that in as well, and I thought the only thing would be is that it does have that relatability for some people. But you're right, you get the same thing from alcohol.
Yeah. I know that this is one of your favorite scenes, but the Marta ballet story and the dad leaving.
Oh no.
Yeah, nah. I get why they've included the ballet, and I get why they've included the dad leaving and the mum's eyes and things like that. I just felt it was a little bit on the nose, and I think if she'd just, I don't know, so much hurt for such a young person to be like, I'm going to use all this hurt. I don't know. It didn't sit right with me, and I'm not saying that's all it is. I don't know. Maybe just stick with the dad leaving. That would have been heartbreaking enough. I don't know. It just didn't sit right. Maybe that connection I had with her I just wanted to give her a big cuddle, but I was so proud of her as well. Like the strength of her to still just walk away. Anyway, and to just explain, go, hey, look, I'm this person who never wants to hurt anyone. I've caused a blow up potentially tonight. I didn't mean to. You've hurt me deliberately. It's the last thing I would ever do. Eat a dick, and then off she goes. So, I was just waiting for the brother to have leprosy and the grandmother to be hit by a bus, and I thought it was just going to keep going and going and going, like the worst childhood ever. But the
idea that they've obviously been together for a while and she hasn't said that story means she's not the type to toot her own horn.
Yes, that is very true.
But she needs to know that this is the girl that she's been stringing along, the girl who would never hurt her despite everything she's been through. So anyway.
Yeah, true.
I get what you're saying there.
Yeah. All right. Well, what are some themes or some ideas in this one?
Well, I mean, in its essence, this is basically a story about growing up. And what I like a lot about it is, and I normally wouldn't say this because I love a story about following a big dream, right? And this story isn't about following your big dreams. It's more redefining your big dreams, because the idea of who you want to be isn't based on being a famous actress or a Hollywood director or even a big shot doctor, with a pretty girl on your arm, which is what these three characters really wanted. It's actually about understanding who you are, what's important to you, and listening to your heart. And I love the fact that Ez didn't become a big shot director and Celeste still works at a chicken shop. And I love that this is where we leave them, because what's more important in this story is their self-discovery and their ability to move on from this lifestyle that kind of felt like they were stuck in time in this apartment. I mean, yes, it opens up the possibility of them still being able to achieve a level of their dream job with the theatre and all that kind of stuff that we do leave with. But what was more important was this resolution of being okay in your own skin and living a life that helps get your head in order first and foremost. And that's why, similar to you, I appreciate that 5 years in advance, because it really brings it home as to what was important in this movie.
Yep. Yeah. You've taken a real positive spin on that, which I like, because instead of that idea of, it's still about, feeling comfortable in yourself and dealing with that big blow ups about rejection and how you grow up with that rejection, I guess. But I wrote down, I was like, this is like their youth dying. So now looking back on that, I'm like, that's a really, really sad way of looking at it compared to how you've put it. So I liked your positive spin on it a bit more than such a negative look. But I think that, the idea too of these repressed feelings and thoughts and being truthful with yourself can help with that growth as well. And just lastly, this idea of heat of the situation, they've got the radio at the start talking about how hot it is. It's the hottest day in so many years, and why they're all naked. And the night they moved in was hot as well, and it's literally the heat of the situation in this apartment building. The literal symbolism of it as well, and I liked it. But I don't know if you've seen Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. It does that idea of heat so much better. If you're keen, but yeah, I think both got very similar thoughts on that whole thing.
Yeah. I like the way you say, the dying of your youth. It is the same thing as saying growing up, right? Like we're talking about the same thing there. I never thought of it as being a more positive outlook on it, but it is the same thing.
All right. Well, what did you take away from this one?
Look, for me, I love a story that can really progress itself through dialogue. And so that's why this was always kind of in my ballpark, but particularly when that dialogue resonates with me enough to relate, but also more to ponder. I like a movie that makes me think about characters' ideas and how those ideas might mesh with my ideas. And I think this film does that very, very well. And very similar for me, another Spanish film that we did on the pod, Seven Años. I don't think that it's perfect. I don't think it's as good as Seven Años. Seven Años as a actual film narrative really drew me in, and I just edge of my seat stuff from dialogue. But a lot of it works, and I can really appreciate it. It's almost Linklater-esque, that sort of style of film where you're just hanging out with these characters, and as I said, nothing's happening in the story, but so much is happening in their heads and in their minds, and in this case, in their relationships. And that's certainly what I'm going to be taking away from this film if someone ever talks to me about
it. We've got very similar takes, I think. For me, and I'm no big hotshot movie director or anything, but I reckon this could have worked a lot better if it was set in just the apartment the whole time. Like, not sure what the play does. Like, I haven't seen the play. I don't know exactly how the play does it, but if you have dialogue with them sitting there having breakfast, in between showers, getting ready for work, things like that, where you don't have to remove them from this one location. So then when they do come together to have this big argument, you can feel that tension building in that one spot. And yeah, I mean, like you mentioned too, the dialogue between the characters, and you can still build those relationships and those backstories without leaving that apartment. And I've also said here, they could have taken the idea from Seven Años and done it in the one location. So nice that we've both mentioned our Seven Años as a Spanish film that reminds us of this one.
And ironically, it's nothing to do with the fact that they're both Spanish, because they're entirely different films. Yeah. It's just coincidence that they kind of tread that same path. What's really funny, and I'm not even just saying this, when I was watching this film, I was thinking, this could be a play. I was honestly thinking that the whole time watching the film. And then I read it and I was like, oh, well, that's probably why it had such a play feel to it.
I did that with One Night in Miami, that film that came out at the end of last year. I was like, this could be a play, and then I was like, oh wow, it is.
It's quite a famous play, isn't that one?
Possibly, I might have just missed that one. We sometimes jump onto IMDb. Did you go onto IMDb at all to check anyone out?
I did not. I'm not as familiar with the Spanish cast and crew.
Don't worry, me either. So, question time. Did you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
I love that you mentioned the heat in the themes of this film. My question to you was, did you get hot watching this? Because I think they did quite a decent job of communicating that heat early on, and I started to feel quite warm. Like, when you do a good job of this sort of stuff, and this happened when I first watched Titanic. I remember watching Titanic in the summer, and by the end of the film, I was freezing because they just make you feel so cold. And did you get hot watching this movie? We're in the middle of winter here in Australia.
A little bit with the naked bodies lying around, maybe. That was obviously done on purpose. It was. I think it's a very good point that you make, that they obviously did that on purpose. So and then the blow up pool on the rooftop, and it was just the lots of little key bits that they tried to put it out there to prove to you how hot it was.
It is hot, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to ask?
Nah, that was it.
My two things that I had to ask as well, we've pretty much already covered. Did you pick that Marcos and Eze were in a relationship? And you've obviously told us.
Not one bit.
No, me either. No, not at all. I think that and it probably frustrated me a little bit that they kept playing on these lines to try and make it out like they're all going to be like incestuous with each other, or the Maggie putting the clothes out, or so they tried to deceive you a little bit along the way. So I did not pick that at all.
No, neither.
And the last one was, do you think they could have removed that scene with Maggie putting the clothes out?
Well, to be honest, that was just another scene that made me dislike Marcos, because I'm like, this guy is just a big flirt. Like, so that's probably where it had its benefit.
Yep. I didn't really care about how the T-shirt came to his possession, and it was his brother's. That didn't do anything for me at all.
True. No, neither.
All right. Well, I think we're ready to wrap this one up. And at the end, we give the film a rating out of 5 and come up with an average. So what are your final thoughts for this one?
Yeah, look, a lot of what this film was trying to do worked for me. I felt a connection to the philosophical ponderings, and while some of the specifics of the characters' motives were foreign to me, the notion of growing up and starting to discover who you are in order to move forward, that was not only a powerful driver, but really undeniably relatable in some extent as well. So for me, I really enjoyed it, and I'm giving it 3.5 stars.
Very nice. Yeah, I think everything that I've talked throughout this whole time is that the start I struggled with, but on reflection, probably liked a bit more. So possibly rewatch, and I can look at this in a different light. I love a good character piece too, like yourself, and that's what this was. Once it got going, it really got going, and I was really into it. And I think that the performances in that apartment room were just really, really exceptional. And I was quite impressed with it by the end too. So 3.5 for me as well.
I was sweating on you then. I'm like, where's he going with this? How much did he like it? Is he going to give it a 3.5? Is it just a 3? That was really well done, Jesse.
I think it's all you're sweating on it from the heat from the film. You still haven't cooled down. We are on social media. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Please do subscribe to us on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Question this week, changing it up a little bit from the title, but because I don't want to get too personal, but if you're on a deserted island, what's the one item that you must have with you? A bit like a Survivor luxury gift, or
God, it would have to be something to do with bedding or warmth or something.
That's very smart. I was like a pack of Tim Tams. I don't know. But I like that idea. You'll survive longer than I will off a pack of Tim Tams.
I guess I won't get to eat anything, but
but you'll be warm, so it's all good.
You get your sugar cravings after the first half hour, and you'll be nutty.
I should have thought about that one a bit more. We are back again next week for another international film. It's just a bit more enthusiasm. Whoa. So it is the 2019 Indian Hindi language film. It's called Music Teacher. This is directed by Sarthak Dasgupta, and it stars Manav Kaul, Divya Duda, and Neena Gupta. So that is what we've got for you next week.
Sounds good. Sorry, I'm not excited by an international film. A lot of good international films out there. So we'll see where this one lands.
Sometimes 2 in a row, it's nice sometimes to not have to focus on the subtitles the whole time, but especially when we're putting so much effort into it. But I'm still looking. It'll still be good. Music Teacher. That's what we got next week.
Sounds good, mate.
Thank you yet again, and it's been a good discussion. Enjoyed this one.
Yeah. This is one of those films that I enjoyed watching, and then I started pondering it a bit more, and I'm like, God, I'm glad we're having a chat about this one because it deserves a chat.
Yeah, excellent. All right, I'll see you next week.
See you then, mate.